Hello, everybody. I'm so delighted today to interview a very illustrious person and also a very longtime colleague and friend of mine, Bobby Roth of the David Lynch Foundation. He is the CEO of this foundation, which has donated money to sponsor thousands of at-risk students and vets and other challenged communities around the country for teaching them transcendental meditation and bringing them peace, inner peace, when they're dealing with extra challenges in their lives. And he is an author of the book called Strength in Stillness, which is a bestseller on the New York Times bestseller list. And he is here with us today to talk about transcendental meditation and the path of developing consciousness and of improving our lives through developing our inner life. And I'm really delighted to introduce you, Bob, and to invite you to tell us about transcendental meditation, tell us about your path, and I'll have a lot of questions for you from members of my audience that I've collected on this topic, and we're really excited that you're here to answer and to guide us in this way. So
Well,
welcome.
thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nancy. And before I begin, I'd just like to say that it's an honor for me to do this with you. I'm sure your audience recognizes what an extraordinary medical doctor, educator, real leader in the healthcare profession you've been for decades. So anything I can do to support your work, I'm very honored to do that.
Well, thank you. My work is really about everybody who's listening and bringing them the best that I can to help them on their health journey and their life journey. So I'm excited that you're here to help them with both. So where would you like to begin? I would really like to hear where you began with meditation. Like, I know it was a long time ago, maybe 50 years or something. You learned when you were 4 years old. And and I wanted to ask you, what led you to transcendental meditation?
Well, what
Um,
led me to I started meditating actually in 1969, 55 years ago. And I was just a regular kid. I was going to college and during the turbulent 60s. And I wasn't a person who took drugs or was in any sort of extreme politics. I went to college with the idea of wanting to create a better world. I wanted to go into politics and become a United States senator and help change the world. Took me about a month at college to realize that politics was never going to heal the soul of the nation. My father was a medical doctor. My mom was a school teacher. And I decided, okay, politics may not be it. It was not a super, I really thought deeply about it because it was a deep passion. And I thought, well, maybe I could write educational curriculum, get a degree in that, or doctorate in that, and help bring tools to kids who were navigating even then a very tough road ahead of stress and turbulence and turmoil. So I was going to school full time. I was working full time. There were, as history books will tell you, there were riots over Vietnam War, and I was a pretty stressed kid. And a friend of mine was doing something called transcendental meditation. Was not a word in my vocabulary. I didn't know anything about it, but there was something extraordinary about him. And he had a equanimity about him and a clarity and a kindness and a focus, a very successful person. So I said, I don't really believe in any of that sort of thing, meditation. And he had a pen in his hand and he dropped the pen into the other hand and he said, you don't have to believe in gravity for the pen to fall, and you don't have to believe in transcendental meditation for it to work. And so I gave it a try, and it's the best thing I ever did. It was profoundly relaxing and rejuvenating, and it helped me with school, and it's been with me for all these years. And I became a teacher of it so I could bring it to under-resourced populations, which is what we do with the David Lynch Foundation.
well, that's really an amazing story. I think everybody has their own reason for starting a practice such as transcendental meditation, and many people come for health or just they're looking for some relief from stress. So I guess I was going to ask you, do you feel you were a spiritual person, spiritually oriented? I would say you certainly had high values. You wanted to help society, but not particularly looking inward. Is that right at the
Yeah, I
time?
think it was an interesting thing because, in high school, I was just basically, like a dumb high school kid, swam and was a student government and on basketball and sports. But something happened when I went to college in that year, as happens anyway to kids when you now all of a sudden you're out of the safe nest and now you're in a university environment and all the institutions that I was sort of standing on dissipated. I don't know that I was a spiritual person in terms of otherworldly. My spirituality was in living as honest and honorable life as possible, valuing truth at the highest. I wanted to give back. I think the way I was raised, I always wanted to give back to my community. I felt fortunate and blessed with the upbringing that I had, and I knew people were not as fortunate as I. But I also knew that the issues of stress and trauma, while much more to the extreme now, even back then were showing up with drug abuse and alcoholism and anxiety and depression. So even so-called, normal healthy people were suffering from a lot of these issues. So I think I probably went into transcendental meditation for its health benefits first. I'm my father's son. He was a doctor, so I'm sort of skeptical and then it has fully blossomed. You can water a tree because you want the leaves to be greener, and you're still going to get apple, if it's an apple tree, beautiful flowers and delicious sweet fruit. Doesn't matter why you water the tree, you get all the benefits. And the nice thing about transcendental meditation is it really unfolds our full inner potential, whatever we have we're hardwired for, whatever our brain can, how optimized our brain can be, how healthy I can be. And I feel that that is the basis for an integrated sort of spiritual life. Not spiritual in a religious sense. I mean, I'm a religious person, but I mean that in a holistic development sense.
Well, I think that's a beautiful answer. And it made me think, in terms of religion or philosophy or just being a fireman or whatever somebody wants to be and values in their life, culturing the inside, like transcendental meditation, is basically a very specific practice. But on the other hand, it's a generic, like you say, it's like a fertilizer for whatever you want to put your attention and your heart into in your life. So it helps to clear the stress so that your heart is more full, your mind, your emotions are more balanced, and whatever is your nature, you can fulfill that more fully. Isn't that
Well,
right?
yes,
I mean, people of
beautifully
all
put.
religions practice
Yeah, yeah.
transcendental
I mean,
meditation.
I've taught thousands of people of all religions. And in the United States, there's probably 4 million, 5 million people of all religions who've learned transcendental meditation, maybe 12 million worldwide. And you can look at it in any number of ways. I like to use an analogy of an ocean where you have choppy waves on the surface and turbulent, sometimes tsunami-esque waves on the surface, but at the depth of the ocean, it's pretty darn silent. And the mind is the same way, surface of our mind. Some people call it the monkey mind. I like to call it the gotta mind. I gotta do this and I gotta do that and I gotta call him and I gotta call her. All the gottas. And sometimes we have, I gotta make a list. I gotta find the list. I gotta get to sleep. I gotta get up. And it's a natural human desire to say, I'd like some inner calm, some inner equanimity, some inner clarity, some inner connectedness, some inner peace. And the operative word there is inner. And the question is there such a thing as an inner? And if so, how do we get there? So in transcendental meditation, just as we know with the ocean, there's a vertical dimension to the ocean. The ocean is not just the waves, there's a vertical dimension to the ocean, and it's silent at its depth. The hypothesis with transcendental meditation is there's a vertical dimension to our mind. And we have an active thinking mind and a calmer mind. And then deep within every human being, right now, whoever's watching or listening to this, right now, there's a level in your mind which is already calm and settled and peaceful and alert. We've just lost access to it. And transcendental meditation is a simple, natural, effortless technique practiced for 15 to 20 minutes twice a day, sitting comfortably in a chair that allows your active thinking mind to just settle down and experience that inner calm. And when that happens, there's a whole constellation of changes that take place in your body and brain.
That's, I think that there have been what, 600 published studies over like 40 years now or more,
50 years.
50
Yeah, 50.
years that have documented so many different benefits. And I think that helps. It's good to know that all that objective data has been gathered and there's this confirmation. And yet I think when people learn transcendental meditation, mostly it ends up being a very personal decision. Like, hey, even as you describe it, it's like, yeah, I want that. Actually, I have it because I learned transcendental meditation 50 years ago and I do it every day, twice a day. I value that probably, you know, that dimension of my life. I wouldn't sell it for anything. I really wouldn't. There's nothing on the material level that I would trade for having that access, easy access to that settled, calm and, you know, growingly blissful kind of just very soothing state that you come out of. And I'm ready for whatever I'm going to do. And I feel like refreshed. So,
No, and the interesting thing, like the foundation I work with, we've now brought transcendental meditation to 100 hospitals, doctors and nurses in 100 hospitals in the United States. Primarily frontline, we're working with emergency room doctors and nurses and intensive care units. In New York City alone, 46 hospitals. We are working in with veterans, with active duty police on military bases. We have programs with the police departments and fire departments. We're in businesses. Why? Because during that 20-minute period of transcendental meditation, this research has shown, hundreds of studies, published studies has shown that during the meditation, your body in many regards gains a state of rest deeper than the deepest part of deep sleep, yet the mind is awake and settled. And that deep rest, according to research, reduces all these symptoms of chronic stress, whether it's high blood pressure, anxiety, depression, burnout. It improves health, improves resilience. And this is research funded by more than $30 million from the National Institutes of Health and the Department of Defense, published in American Medical Association journals, all these top journals. So it really is, Dr. Nancy, we're sort of beyond the point. A person could be skeptical about transcendental meditation, but not really, because there's so much data that it works. A lot of people say to me, I'm not skeptical that it works. I'm skeptical that I could do it. My mind is so busy. I'm a type A personality. I couldn't close my eyes for a minute. And so they say, I just don't know if I can do it. And the beautiful thing is anyone can do it.
yeah, I like to refer people to some online videos of before and after some kids with ADHD, and in a study where they showed them and interviewed them before they learned TM, and then they practiced it for a month or two, and then they came back and talked about what it did for them. And it doesn't really even matter what they say. They say wonderful things like, I just don't get upset anymore, or I don't fight with my brother, or I do better in school. The teacher's not on my case anymore, or whatever. But you can see it. You can see it in their face. You can hear it in their voice that they've gotten centered. They've gotten this kind of calm inner self enlivened, that they're just on a much more calm and orderly platform.
The interesting thing is beautifully put. The interesting thing is right now, our focus and the interest is to do the large scale studies. They're called phase 3 trials that will have transcendental meditation incorporated into the healthcare system, into Medicare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, employee assistance programs where you work and you have covered for many different healthcare initiatives. So I think it's just a few years away before any one of us could go see our family physician and get a prescription for maybe an antihypertensive medication, something for high blood pressure or anxiety, and also get a prescription for transcendental meditation. It's that far along, the research is that solid, and the need is so great. Right now, there's such a need for some way to address this mental health crisis. And we all know we're all living in it. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, life was one way, but now we notice, well, we're not sleeping as well, or we notice that our buttons get pushed a little bit faster, or we're feeling burned out. We're not appreciating our life, or maybe it's to an extreme. We're on, anti-depression medication. The medications can be fine for people, but it's not getting to the root cause. And the root cause of 90% of all illnesses is chronic stress, the buildup of stress over time. And transcendental meditation has proven itself incredibly effective. And now, with a few more studies, will be definitive that it's the single most effective tool in a toolbox for addressing some of these health-related issues, physical and mental. It's not saying it's the one solution to all problems. Many people will still need to continue with their medications, but over time, that can drop off. And over time, we want something more than just artificially keeping our high blood pressure down. We want to be happier inside. We want to be more creative. We want to enjoy our life more.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people, as a doctor, I know there's an important place for pharmaceuticals, and there are times when I recommend them to patients. But I also know that a lot of people who maybe they don't have a depression that is so physiological or so genetically based that they really have to be on medicine, but they went on medicine because they were overwhelmed or the stress just got to them. And often they say, I don't like being on this because it does make me feel less stressed, but it also makes me feel numb. So when you say creative and you say enjoy life more, they're not necessarily doing that. They're suffering less, but they're not enjoying more. So, and transcendental meditation is something that's compatible with any kind of medical treatment. People can practice TM no matter what, their medical state, as long as they can close their eyes and think a thought, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes people say, well, how does TM differ from regular meditation? How's transcendental meditation different from just regular meditation? I've tried to meditate. They say, I tried to clear my mind of thoughts. I couldn't do it. Or I had a guided meditation, or I used an app like Headspace, and it was nice, but I didn't continue with it, or anything like that. And so if it's okay, I could do a little explanation of how transcendental meditation differs. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
And mindfulness is huge these days. And I think Norm Rosenthal, in his book on Supermind, which was a New York Times bestseller as well, he's a psychiatrist. He made interesting comments about mindfulness and TM, and that he has patients and colleagues who do even both of them.
sure.
You don't mix them at the same time, but that they have different effects. They have different benefits for them.
We need more evidence-based, effective tools in our toolbox. And I think as research continues, it's going to be very clear to doctors, and to healthcare practitioners, this meditation, mindfulness can be very, very good for helping to help chronic pain. Transcendental meditation is very effective for giving the body deep rest, and then eliminating the buildup of chronic stress and becoming healthier, happier. Across the board, I'm not a person who says, this is the only way. I always say it's not either or, it's yes and. Yes, this works, and can this help too? It's a big war out there. I mean, just that statement that I said, 90% of every illness has a root cause of chronic stress. Just means stress built up over time. Daily stresses are not getting ameliorated. They're not getting alleviated. It builds up and it builds up. And we may exercise, and we may eat right. We may try and get enough sleep. Still builds up because we're missing all these things are from the neck down. We're missing something from the neck up. And transcendental meditation is such an effortless, easy, natural tool to access that field of stillness that lies within. And then all these benefits naturally accrue.
Yeah, I think the effects on cardiovascular health are really striking, and how study showed that in people who had heart attacks, that if they practice TM, versus a control group. They had a 48% reduction in getting another heart attack or dying of cardiovascular disease. And I've interviewed a few of those people, those patients, and they just found that it just transforms their physiology, that twice a day they get this deep relaxation and rest. It's like the whole body gets more balanced. And that's a very profound thing. The body healing itself, really,
Well,
without thinking about it.
if you want to fix your car, you turn off the engine. If you want to fix your computer, you turn off your computer. If you want your body to heal itself, you give it a rest in many regards deeper than the deepest part of sleep. It's different than sleep. It's a
Mhm.
state of restful alertness where your body is profoundly rested and you're wide awake inside. And that has huge effects. We work a lot with veterans, as I said, police and firefighters who suffer from very high levels of trauma and stress. And transcendental meditation has proven in research to be more effective for healing, healing the buildup of trauma and the scar of trauma, and really giving people a life. So they're not just, as they say, surviving, they're actually thriving. And I just like to say, this is transcendental meditation, not some miracle wonder thing. It's just accessing a mechanism. We're all hardwired. We all have the ability to take profound rest at will, this restful state of restful alertness. We've just lost how. We've lost how. Maybe thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago, people had more access to it. And transcendental meditation, again, is a simple, natural, effortless technique practiced for 20 minutes twice a day, sitting comfortably in a chair with the eyes closed. Not a religion. It's not a philosophy, not a change in lifestyle. The technique is taught one-to-one from a trained, certified teacher of TM. It takes about an hour a day over 4 consecutive days to learn. And then you've got it. There's no app that you're carrying around. It's not like after 2 months, you finally get the hang of it. You got it within those few days.
I think that's a really striking feature of transcendental meditation. I don't know of any other meditation where a teacher is certified. And I know these transcendental meditation teachers. I actually did the training myself years ago in a 9-month course that was full time. And I think it's still a 5-month, absolutely full time, morning, afternoon, evening, no other things. People go to Bali or some other place. They get away from their life and they're fully immersed in this training to really be able to impart that technique with the effortlessness in which it is properly practiced.
No,
And
and
to
it's
learn
a
one-on-one, that's
yeah.
amazing.
No, it's really one-on-one. As we get more and more into sort of apps and online, people really appreciate that they have a teacher. They have a certified teacher who they can work with, who helps them learn the technique, and then is there, and other teachers are there all over the world to help you as you just to, provide support and an ongoing follow-up should you have any questions going forward. It's a people say, they often say, what do you mean by transcendental? What is that? Again, transcendental. And I say, if you look up the word transcend, to transcend in the dictionary, it says to go beyond ordinary human limitations. And so you have an athlete who's a transcendent athlete. The old days it was Michael Jordan. Today it could be another athlete, someone who is above and beyond. You can have a transcendent person in the arts, music. But we always are looking for transcendent moments. Holding a newborn baby in our arms can be a transcendent moment. Going to an unbelievable concert. You're sort of going to a concert, you weren't sure, and then we've all had that, like a magic moment. You go, oh my gosh, or looking up on a night where there's no full moon and you can see the stars just shining bright. That's like an experience of awe. But that's all outside. It's outside. And after a while, an extraordinary experience, Dr. Nancy, becomes ordinary. So you get used to it. The beautiful thing about transcendental meditation, it's a meditation technique that allows the attention of the mind to turn within and experience deeper levels of ourself, just quieter levels of our own mind and more expanded levels. And it's so peaceful and it's such a relief and it's so natural and familiar and yet unique. And when we're finished with our 15 to 20-minute practice of TM, we come back to our children, our job, our life refreshed, like we've just had somehow a shower of the stress of the day, the grime of the day washed off of us. And it's extraordinary. And this is why millions of people learn it and continue to practice it regularly, just like our beloved Dr. Nancy Lonsdorf.
So I wanted to bring up this point, elaborate a little bit about the teacher, that for 50 some years, the TM organization has offered free follow-up for anyone who learned transcendental meditation. So if anybody's even listening to this and they learned 30 years ago and they say, well, I haven't done it, I'm kind of, I don't really know where to start again, they can connect with any teacher and have a 20, 30, whatever minute session it takes free of charge to get refreshed on the practice. And the teacher will take them simply through the steps and they'll have their first meditation again and have all their questions answered. So I think that's a wonderful thing, but there's also really a very special thing that you've been offering since the start of the pandemic. And I want to bring that to people's awareness because whatever meditation or inner quiet process that you might do, you can join Bob Roth twice a day online and a group of how many people now?
Sometimes the first session, thousands, and then many, many hundreds. It gets replayed throughout the day. It's a little 30, 35-minute session where I talk for a few minutes about the genius. You connect by Zoom, it's audio. In the morning, 7 o'clock Eastern time, and in the afternoon, 6 p.m. Eastern time, but it gets replayed throughout the day. So if you're on the West Coast, it's every hour it gets replayed, the same in the evening. And I talk for 5 minutes about the genius of nature, some aspect about just the extraordinary world that we live in, and about the brain, about some discovery in, astronomy or physics, but simple stuff to understand. Then we do a 20-minute meditation. You have a 20-minute silent period to do whatever you want to do. And then I end with some amazing quotes. There's some amazing people throughout time, poets and scientists and theologians and artists who have deep insights into the nature of reality. So I share those quotes or poems, and it doesn't cost anything. I've been doing it for almost 4 years and 8 months, twice a day. I love it, and anybody can join in.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm going to post below this video the information of how anybody can join in. I have so many patients that tell me that they join you twice a day, that you're just like some anchor in their life, and that session is, and I just can't tell you how meaningful that is to so many people. And they tell me from time to time, and it's like, and I can relate because I know I've been to the sessions myself, and they're just an oasis from the world. Not only can you have this oasis inside yourself, but you can actually join a group of people whenever you want, twice a day, and just have that silence, knowing that there are thousands of other people meditating with you at the same time. And it's just a beautiful support, I think, for people's practice.
Well, I love it. I love that I get to meditate with so many people, and I love discovering extraordinary things about the universe around us. And I love hearing, reading out the wisdom of Emily Dickinson, or any of these just extraordinary poets and artists and thinkers throughout time. And the message is always the same. It's so interesting, Dr. Nancy. The message is always the same. Know thyself. The kingdom of heaven is within. Just, there's that inner field. It doesn't matter what vocabulary you use. There's a field that lies within every human being, deep within everyone. When it's getting impossible to manage all the trauma and stress outside of us, and it's moving too fast, and the world is changing too fast, and we don't feel we have any institution or anything that we can count on, well, it turns out the message has been the same for thousands of years, turn within. True happiness lies within. Strength, power, equanimity, love, energy is within. And so we just take a few minutes twice a day to access that, and then that gets infused in our life. It's a wonderful thing, and I love getting to meditate with everybody too. So I love doing it.
Thinking about all these people joining together at the same time online to meditate, it makes me think about the research that's been done on what's called the Maharishi effect, which is an effect that was named in scientific research to describe the influence of group practice of this transcendence, transcendental meditation, and its advanced programs, the effect that it can have actually rippling out into society in a positive way, meaning that, like you described, at a deep level, we all have this silence within. And there are physicists and philosophers and many people bridging that gap who say that, we're all connected in this level of deep consciousness, and that it's a field that is naturally nurturing to everything in life, everything good, everything life is supporting, everything that supports all the good things in life that support people's happiness and their health and the health of the planet and whatever. So the question I have is, there are like over 50 studies that show that when there are these groups of people practicing together, especially in one place physically, that it can change and improve society's trends as a whole and dissipate some of the stress, even from the people who aren't meditating, that it can cause them to feel less stress. So there's less crime and there's less anger and there's less angst in society. So I'm just wondering, knowing that all that research exists and that the founder of Transcendental Meditation had a dream or had a goal that the world would become a less stressed place. Where do you think we are in that process? And why does it seem to be so hard to get those numbers together? I think it's like 10,000 or several 10,000 groups for the world, Um,
I think, it's such an interesting point. If I could just step back a minute, we talk about that the individual, a person can feel stressed, or a person could have PTSD. Someone has a traumatic experience, they have post-traumatic stress disorder. In transcendental meditation, there's, as we've said, hundreds of studies to show that the technique for the individual can reduce those symptoms of PTSD, anxiety, depression, impulsivity, insomnia, all these different things. Now we see, particularly in 2024, 2025, that the whole country and the whole world collectively is beginning to exhibit qualities of post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, it would be hard not to see that in our own country here in America. And what those are: high levels of collective anxiety, of depression, of substance use disorder, people, drinking and taking drugs, burnout, high blood pressure. So now the question is, how do we address this public health crisis of trauma and stress in society as a whole? And the fascinating thing, since times immemorial, the prediction was, when an individual meditates on their own, yes, they wake up their full creative potential, but in the process, they can heal that trauma and stress. And believe me, there were wars, there was trauma and stress in the past, so they had it. But they also says, the hypothesis is, if you have a certain small percentage of a population, 1% or something, meditating separately, or a smaller percentage, much smaller percentage, doing their meditation techniques as a group, that it would have a collective effect. It would have a calming effect in the whole of society, in the whole quality of life in society. And the explanation for that, or the hypothesis on that, is, as you said, Dr. Nancy, the hypothesis is, you and I are different. We're all different. We're different from the people down the street, different from the people 6,000 mile on the other side of the earth. But the hypothesis is, underlying all of us, there's a level of life that connects us all together. That's not a mystical thing. That's not a religious thing. It's a scientific hypothesis that we are connected to, and physics suggests that, some of their research on unified field theories, that we're all connected together. And at that deepest, most nourishing level, when we meditate and we access that deep within ourselves, we as if turn on the light of peace for the whole of society. We have that statement, violence begets violence. Well, it turns out from this data that peace can beget peace. And I want to pause here for those of you who are going, oh God, what is he talking about? This is not just mumbo jumbo. There, as you said, 50 studies published in top journals that show when small numbers of people are meditating for their own sake, feeling they're not praying for peace, they're not wishing for peace, just accessing that deep inner calm within themselves, that it's like you turn on a light in a bulb and the light radiates out to the bulb, to the whole room, to the whole auditorium. So that's what we're doing. Whether a person believes it or not is irrelevant, because it will work whether you believe it or not, just like electricity works whether you believe it or not. Your question is, how do we make this permanent? How do we not have more people doing this for the whole world? And great efforts are underway to do that all over the world. And in the United States, at Maharishi International University, they have smaller groups there, and in different parts of the world, it is a focus of the David Lynch Foundation, and it's a recognition. It just sounds strange. How could it be that if I'm meditating here in New York City with a bunch of other people, that people 3,000 miles away could benefit from that? And I know I'm going on long, but I'll just make this one point. It's no stranger than 200 years ago, if I would have picked up a cell phone and talked to my brother who was in Japan and I was in New York, you say that's magical. No, that's science. There's an electromagnetic field. We're all connected together. Within nanoseconds, that connection is made. So another hypothesis, there's a deeper field of consciousness. We're all connected there, and we wake up that field within ourselves, and people benefit for it all over the world. It's a great vision of possibilities for the world, because we don't know what's going to change the world. How are we going to stop this polarity, this divisiveness, this hatred, racial, religious, political, just this divisiveness? Well, wouldn't it be great? A technique that's 10,000 years old comes to the rescue to help us, people of all religions, philosophies, to be able to just reduce that stress so we could behave more humanely with each other and we would be less reactive. Sorry for the long answer, but you got me going.
No, you're speaking my thoughts, and I appreciate it. I think people are really looking for something. I think most people don't want to be in that divisiveness and in that feeling of reactivity and angst. They want to feel more easy with all the differences, because it is a world of differences. That's the nature of life. But that we could live more harmoniously with less feelings that drive us apart. And I think those feelings really are stress. It was very interesting. I got some email from an insurance company, Hartford, and it was talking about warning small businesses like a week ago before this election, is saying, are you prepared for civil unrest? And it says, they pay the bill, right? When stores get broken into and vandalized, all that. So they said, and they had some like scientific psychological reference, and they said, civil unrest is a result of the buildup of stress in society, and then it breaks out when it reaches a certain level. And I thought that's exactly what Maharishi was saying. He said it's collective stress in the consciousness of a nation or in a society that leads to, those people who may be the weakest or the most stressed out, they're the ones who act it out, but it's really a result of everyone. In fact, I heard a candidate, not one of the major candidates, but one candidate after an event in our nation in the last 6 months or so, and he said the same thing. He said, I think these things happen because there's a collective buildup of stress, and then something happens or almost happens. So I think that this concept is becoming part of the national conversation, and I think that's extremely important because, as you prefaced what you were saying, you said this may sound really strange or unusual, but I think it's becoming less strange, and that's good. It's amazing how long it may take for our cultures to get used to a new idea. But, meditation was very strange 50 years ago. Nobody did yoga. I grew up in Wisconsin. I'd never heard of yoga. And now everybody does it. So I think this could have its time, but I hope it hurries up because I think we all feel like we need something to soften the atmosphere.
Well, there's something beautiful just to think that on some deep level that we are all connected and that we can have it. We can, by becoming more peaceful within ourselves. And I don't mean just on a surface level, but if you think of a cross section of ocean deep within, some deep level, or just like the waves, there's the waves, but then there's the bed of the ocean. That somehow, if we get stronger and healthier within ourselves, and enough people are doing that, then even the people who aren't doing it will benefit. Just like war, violence creates in a community, makes everybody's blood pressure go up, even though it's just a few people who are participating, or engaged in the violence. Just the opposite. It turns out that if we can access a profound field of peace within ourselves, because of our inherent connectedness to everyone, that goes beyond religious borders, boundaries, and national boundaries, that we could transform civilization, society. It's very heartwarming. It's intuitively, it kind of makes sense. And now with all the data that supports it, that time of a phase transition, of a new paradigm shift. We used to think that the sun rotated around the earth. The earth was the center of the universe. And then there was a shift. We used to think in the germ theory that nobody thought it was germs that created disease. This, it was some miasma or some in the atmosphere, in the air. And then it changed when that science came out. No, the germ theory, it changed everything. Well, this notion that, we're separate, we're distinct from each other, and all that, it's not true. It's not true on so many levels, and on the deepest level, it's revealing that it's not true, and that we can create a powerful effect for everyone. We can make all of ours become healthier. And I just finished this point by saying, we're not talking about we talk about establishing large groups of maybe 10,000, could be college students, it could be in the military. They take a few minutes out twice a day from their active duty military, or when they're at a military base, and they meditate for a couple of minutes, not taking them away from their work, that could change society in such a significant way. I think it's not, as you're saying, it's not long, because the need is so great. Nothing else is working. We're going to just drop more bombs? Are we going to, that's going to do it? We're just going to starve people, where economic sanctions, nation building, they're not working. We're still going to need a military. We're still going to need these things, but we just have to add that element of how can we address societal stress. And none of those other things can address that. Still need those other things, but for now, add this huge change. But I like to go back again to how this, if I could, how this works. Is that all right?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Or did you have a question?
No, go ahead. I have a few more questions for the individual, but I want you to
Yeah, I
fully
wanted to talk about how,
express
no, I want
it.
to, for the individual. I want to bring it back to the
Yeah,
individual.
yeah,
I just
yeah,
want to
do
say,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, go
So
ahead.
how does TM work? And we both, Dr. Nancy and I, use the word effortless. So think about this for a moment. You're sitting in a room and you're listening to some really awful music for some reason, awful music. It's just on. And in the other room, some extraordinarily beautiful, just unbelievably beautiful music comes on. Where's your attention go? Whoa, turn that music up, turn off this terrible stuff. Or you go on a vacation and some friend gives you two books to read, and one book is so bad you can't read a word, and the other book is so great, hours could go by. So what is that? Your attention drawn to that music, your attention absorbed in the book. Here's the key to understanding how transcendental meditation works. Given the opportunity, your mind will always be drawn to something more satisfying, right? More delicious food, more fragrant smell, more beautiful sunset, a more interesting conversation, more pleasurable touch, feel, anything. Our attention is drawn to something more satisfying, but it goes out through our senses. In transcendental meditation, we learn how to give the attention of the mind an inward direction. Like you teach a child how to dive, you take the correct angle, then gravity takes over, we give inward direction, and without any effort whatsoever, automatically your attention of your mind is drawn inward because deeper levels are more satisfying. That's how it works. That's how everyone can do this, from a 10-year-old child to a person who's a skeptical doctorate in something, some physics or whatever. And for that, to take that inward dive, when you learn transcendental meditation, you're given a vehicle, a sound with no meaning. It's called a mantra. Your teacher, your certified teacher, gives you a sound, a mantra, and teaches you how to use it properly. And within minutes, you've got it. So I just wanted to clarify that. It takes about an hour a day over 4 consecutive days, but it's to learn, but it's completely effortless.
Lovely. And I I wanted to bring it back like you are to the individual, the benefits, and what, on an individual level, TM alone can help to deal with anxiety because it breaks that cycle. And also when you were mentioning, you know, first responders and doctors in ICUs and in ERs and the level of pressure and tension, you just think of the fight or flight response, the adrenaline's high. This actually, in a sense, turns the switch, and the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest cycle starts to kick in, and all of that tension and all of that heightened pressure just starts to just dissipate, and the whole body relaxes and the mind calms down, and you, like you said, you come out refreshed. So we know that gets rid of a lot of anxiety right there, and transcendental meditation there's plenty of studies on it that show that it helps with anxiety. So I wanted to ask you, what else do you recommend? I've had a lot of questions from people who were interested in meditation and how it might impact their health, and also, growth of consciousness. Can we talk a little bit about that? Some people actually learn transcendental meditation or other meditations because they want to develop their consciousness, or they want to develop their spiritual nature or something like that. So my question is, how do people know if it's working for them or not? Like, say they meditate for some time, and how do they gauge, and does it matter? Does a person have to have a conscious appreciation? What are the signposts really?
For spiritual development or for overall health, or what
No, for
would...
spiritual development. Yeah, for spiritual
So
development.
I would say, first of all, I
And
like
and
to...
the excuse me, the question, the side question was, some people are concerned that, okay, I have a health problem. Is that going to prevent me from spiritually developing, or,
Oh,
meditating properly? Or do I have to have a perfect body in order to, have higher consciousness, or whatever they're looking for?
no, I like to when I talk about spiritual development, again, I define it as it's not a religious thing, it's not a faith-based thing. That's fine, but that's spiritual is the sort of integrated overall development of mind, body, heart, relationships, and my own connection to, uh, it could be to nature, to God, whatever, but it's an integrated approach. And they're not separate from one another. And the beautiful thing about transcendental meditation, in one stroke, in one simple, effortless procedure, you're giving the body this deep rest so it can heal itself of the stress that can block the development of consciousness. If we have a bad headache, it's hard to think about higher states of consciousness if we have migraine headaches. So here's a simple tool that can do that. And if we don't have any particular health issues, I mean, most people learn TMS not because they have a migraine headache or this or that. They just want to live more of their life. They want to enjoy more of their life. But I think a sign of improving health, sleeping a little bit better, being less reactive, being more considerate of others, or more, having that term window of tolerance, so where our buttons don't get pushed as much. That's a sign of spiritual growth, having good physical health or improved physical health. But I find, and Dr. Norman Rosenthal, he is a top psychiatrist. He wrote a book called Supermind, and you could get that book. And Dr. Nancy, you should talk about your books. He's written just extraordinary that I give out to all my friends. But he did a survey, and this idea of higher states of consciousness or cosmic consciousness, it's just becoming more comfortable, familiar, at home with yourself. Just as simple as that. And more awake to the environment, more awake to other, and empathic, intuitive to other people's needs and desires. You used to talk about some people, you say, read the room, they go into a room, they just completely oblivious because they're in their own narrow boundaries. Well, transcendental meditation expands our awareness. So we read a room, we read our life, we read what our family and friends need, and we're more in a position to give, to help uplift them. So the way I look at spiritual developments in three ways. It's being more comfortable in myself, more familiar, at ease within my own skin, more appreciative of others in my environment, deeper appreciation of other people and who they are and what their needs are. And then the third is even deeper than that, and that is a sense of connection with everyone and everything. And that's a state of unity. And I think that is a spiritual development, a state of unity. And I would like to say this is not based on a philosophical approach to life. It's based on the development, the improvement of my health, the growth of consciousness, and even growth of consciousness. It's like, who is it? Someone said, spiritual development is less becoming something you're not and more getting rid of something you're not yet, and just getting rid of the stresses that block from who you already are. So I like to see it as more comfortable within myself, greater appreciation for others, and a sense of connectedness and not disconnectedness to the world around me. There's a big problem of loneliness in the world today. Surgeon General talks about that. And that's just a lack of connectedness. And so transcendental meditation does more than just lower high blood pressure. It lowers high blood pressure, and that's a great achievement, but it's the foundation for appreciating myself more fully, knowing myself more fully, appreciating the people around me more fully, and feeling connectedness to everyone and everything. I hope that helped to answer the question.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful, very clear answer. And I couldn't help but think with that loneliness, how you provide a connection for a lot of people who want to feel connected to like-minded folks. And maybe they don't have that in close proximity in their life. Maybe people around them have very different viewpoints or predispositions to maybe not so going inward, like they like their meditation, or they love art and they love the self-reflection of some of these beautiful poets and artists. So I would just encourage everybody to join Bob Roth with the twice daily. Add your power of consciousness to the group and your meditation, and enjoy that connection. And I would end here, but I do have in my mind one question because
Sure.
I have quite a few people who are meditation oriented, yoga oriented, and yet they are getting to an age in their life where maybe they're in their 70s and they feel like, okay, I've chosen this path. I loved it. It helped my health, but maybe my health isn't perfect now. Maybe I have some things I'm dealing with, and maybe I would have loved to just be immortal, but now I feel like I am getting older and my body is aging. So how do you reconcile, getting benefits of your meditation and developing your spiritual nature, like you were just describing so beautifully? And yet maybe people had some ideal that was even bigger than that for their lives, and they wonder where they stand now, or how they get through
I
these.
think sometimes you're in the middle. I think a lot of that is we can have grown a lot more, but the world itself is so stressful now. There's so much anxiety in the collective consciousness that we may not even know how much we have spiritually developed because we're moving in this sort of ocean of anxiety. And I think my experiences, my own experience is that we shouldn't undermine, doubt our own spiritual development. This is very intense times right now, very intense times in the world for many, many people. And I always see transcendental meditation as now we're sailing a boat through rough waters, or we're in rough waters in a boat. I think we've dropped an anchor. We have a good anchor in ourselves. And I would just say, keep going, keep going, keep going. There's a couple of wonderful things. Confucius said, doesn't matter how slow you go, just don't stop. And a Japanese proverb is fall down 7 times, stand up 8. We just keep going and through these times. And Churchill said, if you're marching through hell, just keep marching. So I think we just need to keep going. And we have in transcendental meditation and in advanced programs some very powerful tools to help us navigate these times, these dark times, and maintain an inner light. So I would say to everyone who's doing a meditation practice, the main thing is keep going. And sometimes the meditation just also can reduce the levels of anxiety. I taught, for example, Michael J. Fox, who is famous and who has Parkinson's. And transcendental meditation is not, and he knows this, going to be a cure for Parkinson's. But he said it has given him his life back because he's now been meditating 15 years. 15 years ago, he was worried sick about what his life was going to be like 15 years later. He couldn't live in the present moment because he was so worried about what it was going to be. And he told me just even recently that it has given him his life back. He has these issues, but by reducing the anxiety, it has changed everything. And I have a little, he's now 20 years old. I taught this Joey, I wrote about him in my book, who has nonverbal autism. And he used to be so anxious. He was a 15-year-old kid. He was a teenager. He was anxious. And now the meditation has given him a life that he still has to deal with what he has to deal with, the health challenges, but his consciousness, his mind is clearer. He can handle the things better. So my thing is we just keep going. If we perceive we're going slow, Confucius says, just don't stop. If you feel like you're not, let's just all keep going and keep a sense of community. Listen to Dr. Nancy because she's a great leader, a health leader, a spiritual leader, and a humble, beautiful soul. So I have a philosophy whenever Dr. Nancy asks me anything is WNW, whatever Nancy wants. So I'm happy to be here with you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those really wise words and heartfelt words. I think everybody feels inspired and encouraged on their path from those words. I just want to thank you and remind everyone that this is Bob Roth, the CEO of the David Lynch Foundation, which has brought transcendental meditation to thousands and thousands of people in need and help them with their inner peace. And he's the author of Strength and Stillness. I also wanted to say that he's been dubbed the guru of Wall Street because he's taught so many in that area. And yeah,
I want to be, I want to just be dubbed the friend of Nancy, FON.
well, as you can see, he's also just a charming person who is a good friend to everybody that he knows. And I just thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today. And I think a lot of people right now are going to look for this link and try to join you for some of your sessions. And thank you so much. It's such a commitment and such a beautiful thing that you, for 5 years, twice a day, appear at the right time to guide people in their meditation. And I think it's something right about the world. And thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Really appreciate you and grateful to your audience for listening to this.
Till we meet again. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care. Bye.